Hello, this is Elizabeth Puentes, Leslie Moreno, and Mackenzie Cooper, and today we're going to be talking about tails in different vertebrates. So what is a tail? On this slide, we have a picture of the skeletal anatomy of a dog tail, and this is just to kind of give you an idea of what bones make up a tail. So first up, extending from the lumbar region is the sacrum, which is the region that is shaded red, and from the sacrum comes the caudal vertebrae. The length of a tail is determined by how many caudal vertebrae there are, and depending on the breeds of dogs, it can range from 3 to up to 25 caudal vertebrae. And now that we have an idea of what really makes up the tail, we are going to focus on two major types of tails and what exactly they do. These two major types of tails are called prehensile tails, which are adapted for seizing and grasping, and non-prehensile, which are not adapted for seizing and grasping.
So before we get started on some of the more general functions of tails, we wanted to play a little game of pin the tail. So I will say the letter of one of the tails and give you a second to say which animal it matches to. A. If you said kangaroo, you're correct. Kangaroos have really strong tails and can even balance on their tail in what is termed as a tripod stance when they fight with one another. B. If you matched it to the cow, you are correct. Cows and grazing animals can't really reach the posterior end of their body, so they have long, thin tails with tufts of hair at the end that work as fly swatters against flies and pests. C. If you matched it to the peacock, you are correct. Peacocks use their big, colorful tail feathers to attract mates. D. If you matched it to the lemur, you are correct. Ring-tailed lemurs live in close-knit groups known as troops, and they will hold their tails high in the air where the bright pattern is easily seen to one another. They can also wave their tail like a warning flag when they encounter rival groups. And finally, E. If you matched it to that goldfish there, you are correct. Fish and sea mammals use their tail fins to propel through the water, kind of like the motor on a boat. Fish tails move from side to side, whereas sea mammals' tails move up and down. As it was mentioned before, animals have two types of tails, non-prehensile and prehensile. Some animals have stronger tails that act as sort of a fifth limb, and are called prehensile tails. These tails can be used to grab and manipulate objects as well as hold the weight of the animal's body. They are able to do this because the muscle attachment sites are larger, thus allowing for muscle expansion and bending movements when a flexing force is applied. Prehensile tails are an example of convergent evolution. Convergent evolution is when organisms independently find their way to the same evolutionary solution to the same environmental problem. So in this case, prehensile tails have independently evolved in 6 lineages of mammals. This variety of non-closely related vertebrates includes species such as possums, some species of anteaters, New World monkeys such as capuchin, howler, and spider monkeys, and harvest mice, as well as non-mammals such as chameleons, and even invertebrates such as seahorses. Prehensile tails help animals move in tropical rainforest canopies, especially those forests with large canopy gaps, fewer vines, more fragile branches, or even to anchor their bodies while they're feeding. A tail that can't grasp is considered non-prehensile. Though they can't grasp objects or swing from branches like monkeys, non-prehensile tails serve a variety of essential functions. And the first one we're going to talk about is expression and communication. Many mammals, such as cats, have glands at the base of their tails that secrete pheromones. You may notice when your cat comes to greet you, it'll usually rub its rear on you or on your legs. While this may just seem like an affectionate gesture, you're actually being identified as part of the cat's territory. It's a scent that we can't smell, but other animals can. Cats and other mammals also use their tails to communicate with each other and with us. Certain movements and positions can indicate a variety of emotions, such as a cat that is feeling friendly will hold its tail high in the air with a tall, confident posture, whereas a playful cat will curve its tail like a question mark. An aggressive cat will display a fluffed up tail or a tail that is lashing from side to side. And a fearful or pained cat will tuck its tail underneath and keep it close to its body. Happy tail syndrome is a condition commonly seen in dogs. If you have a dog, you've probably been whacked by an excited dog's tail at least once, so you know they normally don't even think about what their tail is hitting. But happy tail syndrome is when a dog injures its tail by wagging it forcefully at an object. It can be a difficult issue to solve, as part of recovery requires the dog to stop hitting it on things, and that can be a difficult task.
And here I've got a little video to show you guys.
Shimmy, shimmy, y'all, shimmy, yam, shimmy, yeah. Give me the mic so I can take it away.
So why do you guys think that hippos do this? So as you saw in the video, male hippos spin their tails around to fling their poop, and the reason they do this is that so they can mark their territory and impress other females.
What vertebrate animals can you think of that uses their tails to defend themselves? If you said porcupines, snakes, kangaroos, lizards, and or stingrays, you are correct. Here on the top left, you can see a gecko that has dropped its tail and has grown it back. Geckos and other lizards are able to drop their tails as a defense mechanism in order to distract predators. The University of Michigan stated that lizard tail shedding can be concluded to point towards one group of predators, which are venomous snakes. Lizards who live where there are venomous snakes are able to lose their tails compared to other lizards living on islands with no poisonous snakes, who have lost the ability to lose their tails. Here on the right we have a pangolin. Fun fact is that they're the only scaled mammals, and they have a semi-prehensile tail which they use for marking and self-defense. They are able to roll up their tails to form an armed ball that is super strong that even lions cannot bite through them. On the bottom left, we have a cotton rat. Interesting fact is that the cotton rat will also lose their tail as a defense mechanism. If a predator grabs them from the tail, they will turn and turn until their tail is cut off and escape. Can you guess what kind of animal is on the bottom right? If you guessed stingray, you are correct. Stingrays have this flat and pointy stinger that is equipped with barbs and is able to inflict deep wounds. Fun fact is that the stinger can also have lethal poisonous glands surrounding it. Scientists believe that stingray's tail was formed to aid in maneuvering in water, and at one point genetic mechanisms allowed the pectoral fins to expand forward to help them better in maneuvering in water, but then the tail became unnecessary and was modified as a defense mechanism, which leads us to the sharp stinger today. If you live in Texas, you've probably heard about rattlesnakes. Rattlesnakes use their tail to create a rattling sound to warn or distract predators. Fun fact is that the rattle is made up of keratin, which is what our hair and nails are also made out of. They have about 50 to 100 rattles per second, and they have hollow interlocked segments that are loosely fitted. And so they use their strong tail muscles to move their tail super fast, which creates the rattling sound. The rattle on snakes is known to have evolved only once in the past, and scientists show it may have evolved from a tail vibration behavior, which is actually very common among many other snake species. Scientists have two different hypotheses on how the rattle evolved. The first hypothesis is that the tail shaking caused calluses of keratin, which provided better warning. The second hypothesis is that snakes, which made noise from their tails, were better at scaring off predators, and the noise made tail features spread and eventually become refined as a rattle. Tail feathers help birds steer and maneuver during flight, along with provide stability, balance, creates lift, and controls drag for the birds. As you can see here in this macaw picture, he is using his tail feathers by having them spread out to help control on his landing. Here on the upper right is a scissor-tailed flycatcher, and as you can see here, their tail is a little different. Their primary diet are small insects, and so their tail makes them experts at catching insects with sharp mid-air twists and turns. Tail feathers are actually known to evolve from dinosaurs. The first dinosaur with a well-developed tail with feathers is known today as the Archaeopteryx, which is shown here on the bottom right.
So now that we've learned about the two types of tails and the myriad of functions they perform, the big question is, why don't humans have tails anymore? So simply put, we actually do not have the need for tails anymore. We don't need to scavenge food or be up in trees, and a really big reason is that we don't need tails for any kind of balancing. Our bodies are aligned with a center of gravity that passes through our spines and down to our feet without having to counterbalance the weight of our body or head. And just to give you guys a bit of background on the evolution of primates losing their tails and starting to walk upright, we know that the oldest primate fossils that have been found are about 66 million years old and had fully fledged tails and most likely lived in canopies. But the most primitive ape that we know of is actually about 20 million years old and no longer had a tail. This ape was called the Prehensile, and to the side you can see a picture of what it most likely looked like. And lastly, biologists also found that the reason apes could walk upright was most likely due to having a shorter lumbar region because of the absence of the tail. And so from that, we can deduce as to why humans do not have or need tails. So this concludes the end of our presentation, and we hope you all now know a little bit more on the importance of tails and how they work. Thank you and have a wonderful day.